paranormal that cannot be explained by scientific methods.
Told of a creature that was 6.5 to 7 feet tall.
The CIA ran secret mind control experiments.
It's a tale of a creature that's been seen by many, but believed by few.
And experts say there have been reported sightings of paranormal activity.
And there was this creature, and it ran down this hill.
They say something was flying over their house, and they have no idea what it was.
How the world's most powerful individuals are actually shape-shifting reptilians.
My scariest ghost hunting experience.
Jason and JV.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. Can't handle the truth. Quit it now.
Beyond reality. Radio.
It's Thursday on the West Coast, Friday on the East Coast. Many of you are stuck somewhere in between. Welcome to Beyond Reality Radio with myself, Jason Hawes, and the always awesome JV Johnson.
So I know what you're thinking. You're looking at me with kind of funny. You're saying,
I always look at you funny. Just tonight I'm looking at you a little funnier.
Yeah, you're saying, why the heck are you wearing sunglasses in the studio?
Yeah, it's like you're what? I don't know. There's just so much I could go. I mean, I was trying to think of the look, and it almost reminds me of something with John Cusack, but I don't know.
No, okay. Well, it had nothing to do with John Cusack. It's actually National Shades Day.
Oh, God.
Yes, it's National Shades Day, and there's a point to it,
Yeah, but are they referring to shades like on the windows?
No, they're actually referring to the kind you wear on your face, sunglasses. But the idea here is I'm going
to burn that damn calendar. Yeah, right. I swear to God, I'm going to burn it.
It's changed your life. You wear shades in support of your favorite charity. So, whatever your favorite charity has to be or happens to be, you wear shades to offer recognition for the fact that you support that charity. Now, so I decided to throw some shades.
You are looking for anything to sell this. You are looking for anything to sell this idea.
Well, I'm doing my best, okay? And so I'm wearing my shades for the American Cancer Society, just so everybody knows.
Man, you're you trying to make me look bad.
No, I'm not. You're going to do it?
No, I don't have them down here.
You didn't bring them? Oh, boy. Well, you have to grab them in a break or something. In addition to being National Shades Day, it's also National Dirty Dishes Day and National Ride Your Bike to Work Day. I tried to ride. Well, those aren't shades, but at least they're glasses.
But they're glasses. They're old man glasses.
They're kind of reflective, too. I tried to ride my bike to the studio, but since my studio is in the basement, I took the first few steps with the bike, and it did not turn out well. So I walked the rest of the way.
That's why you get an exercise bike.
Yeah, I do have one in the other room, actually.
Could have just ridden that.
Yeah, I should have. I could have just, because you don't go anywhere. You could pretend, that would have worked.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It works. Whatever.
Okay. Well, welcome to the show.
Hey, if you haven't yet, head over to facebook.com/Beyond Reality Radio, like the Facebook page for us. Then head to beyondrealityradio.com, where you can find all the stations we are on across the country, and it's constantly being updated with new stations being added all the time. You can also download the free iPhone and Android app that allows you to listen live, catch past shows, join the online chat, and more. Or just go at the website, click the in the upper right-hand corner, click the pop-up button, and that'll allow you to listen right there from the website while hanging out in the chat room with a great community of people.
Yeah, and tonight you'd be able to chat about our topic, which is going to be all things psychics, mediums, clairvoyants, healers, people that offer those services to other people. Our guest, Gary Williams, is a writer and a psychic investigator, and he's actually written a book that he calls the Yellow Pages of that category. It's called Miracle Workers, the World's Psychic Consultants. We're going to talk about, first of all, his experiences in researching these people and those particular categories. We're also going to talk about how to spot fakes, and he's going to, I think, talk about some of the ones that he's been very, very impressed with. And I want to make sure we don't get into disparaging anybody, because I don't think that's what we want to do. But certainly, if he's got some people that he thinks are the real deal and he's impressed by them, we should talk about that too.
So I can't use this list of people here that I got.
You can show me, and we can laugh about it.
Yeah. Anyways, but no, so it should be a great show, and I don't know. It's always interesting to get somebody's point of view on this, because it's not saying that Gary is, the leading authority on this, but it's good to talk with somebody who's spent a lot of time researching and looking into these things and get their take on it.
Yeah, and I'm really anxious to see what type of research he did. I know he's done a lot of testing of people who claim to have psychic abilities or claim to be
Which
mediums.
I did a long time ago as well.
Yeah, and that's always interesting to see how those results turn out. So we'll get all of that with Gary. We'll take your phone calls in the second half of the program at 844-687-7669. We should mention that tomorrow night is a best of program.
That is correct.
And then Monday night...
Are you psychic?
Yeah, see how I knew that? Did you see how I knew that?
That's amazing.
I passed the first test. Monday night, Rob Guttrow will be with us. He's an author and a paranormal investigator. We're going to be talking about his new book called Ghosts of England, on a medium's vacation. What happens when a medium goes on vacation? Can they simply switch off their ability at will? Well, those we've talked to say some of them can. Some of them can actually turn it off when they don't want to be bothered. Others say they can't. So I guess it depends on the person.
And then Tuesday should be rather interesting. We've got Judy Carroll coming on, extraterrestrial ambassador. All right, so extraterrestrial contact on Earth from the ET's perspective and the disinformation campaign to cause fear.
Okay, I'm going to sound a little silly here for a moment here, but did we have Judy on before?
Because that topic sounds familiar, but then again, I had a lady who lived across the street from me named Judy Carroll, so I could be really...
You could be really
I could be
off.
biased on this one, yeah.
I just seems like we've talked about that before. Well, I'm excited about it anyway. And Kelly Sullivan Walden, who is a dream expert, will be joining us. And this time, we're actually going to be talking about what dreams mean about specifically your love life. This is something I'm not so sure I want to hear about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't sleep enough to really dream or to remember any of my dreams. Very rarely will I do that. I know you have dreams all the time about volcanoes and stuff.
I'm surprised I didn't come up last night when we were talking about dreams.
I held off. I was biting my inner cheeks.
If anybody, is that I don't think that particular program of Beyond Reality Radio is available anywhere because it was one of the first ones we did at the very beginning when we were online, right? We were just streaming online.
Which episode?
The episode where my dream of volcanoes was discussed.
Volcanoes erupting? No, I think it was still on the radio.
Was it? I don't remember. It seems to me that was
when I was talking about your sexual frustration.
Okay, so you didn't need to bring that up. See, that's where
I'm sorry. It's just for all those new stations out there.
We had an agreement. Okay, well, at least I had an agreement.
I mean, it's not an agreement you ever brought up to me. Anyway, all right. So we're going to take a break, and then we're going to bring in our guest Gary Williams and start getting into this whole psychic stuff. All right, the phone number, because I'm sure a bunch of you might have questions, and we'll be opening up the phone lines a little later, is 844-687-7669. Again, toll free at 844-687-7669. You're listening to Jason and JV Beyond Reality Radio. We'll be back after this.
I'm
Welcome back to the show. It's Beyond Reality Radio with Jason and JV. Telephone number is 844-687-7669. We will open up the phone lines for your questions and comments a little bit later in the program. But tonight we're going to be talking about psychics, mediums, clairvoyants, healers, people that offer services to other people based on, those emotional and those psychic energies. And there's a lot of them out there. We've had many, many of them on this program. And our guest tonight has written a book called The Miracle Workers, the World's Psychic Consultants, in which he has compiled a list of these folks. Kind of calls it the yellow pages of this category, which there may have been a work or two like this in the past, but this is certainly one that's new and up to date and is going to introduce us to a lot of different people.
For all you millennials out there, yellow pages are things that used to actually have phone numbers in them for companies and businesses.
Yeah. When's the last time you got a phone book mailed to you? Because I got one like a few months ago. I'm like, are they still mailing these things
every so
out?
often I'll find one like next to my mailbox. Yeah. They just put it in a plastic bag and drop it near my mail. I usually use it to start the fire in the fireplace.
It's pretty amazing. All right, let's bring our guest into the discussion. Gary Williams is a writer. He's a psychic investigator. His website is GaryWilliamsParanormal.com. Gary, welcome to Beyond Reality Radio. Great to have you on tonight.
Well, good morning from sunny Spain, where it's 6 o'clock in the morning, 20 minutes after 6 in the morning. And you've got the title right. Actually, there's two books, so I don't know how much time we have, but you're right. The Miracle Workers is basically, it came out on March 3rd. Yesterday, my other book, A Walk on the Wild Side, One Man's Experiences with Psychic Phenomena, came out in London and New York, in bookstores all over the world. Published by John Hunt in London, and that's all about my ghost hunting experiences. So we have to get that in, since that's on your A list of subjects. I used to watch the show. As a matter of fact, I've been living in Europe so long, I didn't even realize the show wasn't on anymore.
Well, actually, yeah, it's great to have you on, Gary, and this is Jason. And thanks, I appreciate that. We pulled it from Sci-Fi about almost 2 years ago, and we're in talks.
I had a show for Sci-Fi which was going through Cosgrove Mirror, which produced Unsolved Mysteries. And it was live talk, paranormal talk, television, obviously, and they just said it would be too expensive with a 4-camera shoot and a live studio audience. I wanted it to be like The Tonight Show. And, of course, it was $1 million a week. They said that's a little over our budget. So we actually did the pilot. I've got the pilot. It was done by a guy in Colorado Springs called Richard Panier. So there you go. So would you want to start with the Yellow Pages book came about through Hans Holzer. Remember Hans Holzer, Ghost Hunter? That was just one of his 60 books. Hans Holzer was a self-appointed parapsychologist who died about 8 or 9 years ago.
Yeah.
And he wrote a book called The Psychic Yellow Pages, in which he went around in person and interviewed all these mediums and all these psychics, and he came up with the best of the bunch. Well, I interviewed 140 people, and I came up with about 60. And I have to tell you that out of that 60, obviously the other people weren't worth writing about. And there's a lot of people who have the psychic label and they're not really psychic at all. I came up with one lady in New Jersey who was the top of the cream.
Gary, don't give any names yet. Not yet.
Don't give any names.
Not yet.
Okay, all right. I'm not allowed to give names.
No.
I was saying she was probably the best.
Well, I mean, we've got an hour and change with you, and it's thanks for getting up early with us. I mean, it being just after 6 where you are. Last night, our guest was actually in Germany about running about the same time.
Yeah, same time zone. We're going to get to some names later. I mean, it's not that you can't name them. I just don't want you to name them yet. We want to keep people guessing for a little while.
Keep it a secret.
For a little while. But before,
I think she's probably recording the show on her reel-to-reel tape recorder. So I'm just joking.
We've got about 4 minutes here before we have to jump into break, and let's back this conversation up and let's learn more about you. How did you get your start into all things paranormal?
Oh, my paranormal education started at age of 16 when I was taken to a materialization seance by my high school biology teacher, and we had no idea. We'd never been to a spiritualist church in our life. They gave messages, and as we're going out the door, they said, next week there will be a materialization seance in strong red light, and the materialized figures of your loved ones will be, well, we thought it was fake. Well, it was one of the real ones. They'd all died out in the late 60s. You don't have them anymore. This guy comes in. He sits in a little corner alcove with a curtain, and I was terrified. 16 years old. The light was so bright that you could see everybody's face in the room, even though it was a red light. And the smoky substance comes out of this person, and lo and behold, an Indian guide walks around. This all happened, and by the way, there were no trap doors. Everybody says, well, it must have been a trap door. Come on. I was sitting in front of the only door, and nobody went in or out. Anyway, my education actually began, I think this was about a 3-hour seance. Halfway through, an old man materialized, and he came up to me. I just wanted to get out of the room. I was terrified. And he said, my name is Carl Jung. And if you've ever heard of Freud and Jung,
absolutely.
I'm the Jung half. That's right, I'm the Jung half. And he said, I'm one of your guides. And I was a spiritualist too. And he said, when you grow up, if you ever do, I don't think I ever did grow up, he said, if you ever do grow up, I want you to know that you're going to be doing a lot of work like this. You'll be investigating haunted houses and doing all the things that paranormal investigators do. Of course, I thought it was nonsense. I didn't know who the man was. I went to school the next day, looked up his picture in the library, and it was that man.
Wow.
That's how it started. So it was pretty shocking to me because you can't get that kind of seance anymore. There are famous people who were able to do it. They're all dead now as well. The medium's name was, I was supposed to give a name. Well, he's dead, so it doesn't matter. But anyway, all I'm saying is that's how it began. And then from there on, I was launched into an interest in what happens when we die, all things paranormal. I was born in Virginia Beach, where Edgar Cayce did his thing. Cayce wasn't born in Virginia Beach. He was born in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. But at the end of the day, what does it really boil down to is that I spent my entire youth in the Edgar Cayce library researching all these thousands of books and looking into the trance readings of Cayce and reincarnation, and that's how it all got started. And then I went to Boston. My first good job was at WGBH Boston. I worked on The French Chef with Julia Child. I worked on Masterpiece Theater with Alistair Cook. And I studied astrology the whole time I was living there with a very famous teacher who I'm not allowed to name. She's dead, too. And at any rate, and so and I began to develop my own psychic and astrological abilities. And so now I do readings of astrology and I predict timing. Psychics often say, I can't tell you the exact time. There's no time in the spirit world. And I say back, well, I don't live in a spirit world. I live in Marbella, Spain. So, I'm not interested in that jargon. What I am interested in is somebody's going to pay me a couple $100 for a reading. I'm going to tell them when it's going to happen, and I'm able to do it. And so is a lady in New Jersey who I'm not able to talk about.
Yet.
Keyword.
Yeah, so we will get to names and talk about this in a lot more detail in just a little bit. We're going to take a break right now. Remember the phone number. It's 844-687-7669. We invite your comments and your questions later in the program when we open up the phone lines. And be sure to join the chat. Go to the website at beyondrealityradio.com. Jump into the chat room. There's some great conversation going on there.
Yeah, tonight our guest is Gary Williams, writer and psychic investigator. And so also at some point, if you've had an experience, well, good or bad, with a psychic, give us a shout, especially bad, because we want to know about that as well. But the phone number, when we open up the lines, is 844-687-7669. All right, we're going to take a quick break. More to come. You listen to Jason and JV, Beyond Reality Radio. We'll be back after this.
I don't care Monday warrior, mean strike. Today's Tom Sawyer, mean pride.
I just want to say that you guys do a great job. It's very interesting listening to you guys.
And I have to say quickly that you guys run a wonderful show. You guys do a great job. You guys do a really tight show.
I listen to you guys constantly. It's a fantastic show.
Guys, I totally missed you. This whole place missed you. Man, we were lost without you.
If you could see what I could see, that's all I'm saying.
What you say about his company is what you say about society.
Only on Beyond Reality Radio with Jason Hawes and JV Johnson.
Welcome back to the show. It is Beyond Reality Radio with Jason and JV. Our guest tonight is Gary Williams. He's a writer and a psychic investigator, and actually a lot more than that as well. His website is GaryWilliamsParanormal.com. He's got many books to his credit, and we're going to be talking about The Miracle Workers, his newest book. It's the world's psychic consultants. And also, he's got a new book. I think this is the most recent one, actually. A Walk on the Wild Side, One Man's Experiences with Psychic Phenomena. He's also got a book called Life Beyond Death, and we're going to be talking about all of those things. Again, Gary, thanks for being here. I wanted to kind of get a sense of at what point along the way did you decide someone had to sit down and compile a name or a list of names of psychics, mediums, etc., that turned into this book called The Miracle Workers?
Well, I have to be honest with you. Most of them came from Hans Holzer, who is dead. And I actually got his old book, which came out in 1999. And then, of course, you can go on the Internet and you can just type in psychics in various cities. And it didn't take me very long to see which ones might be real. And also I did mediums, people who contact the other side. Can I mention Mr. Flint, or is that out of the question?
No, it's
dead,
fine.
too. He was a famous medium. Okay, well, Leslie Flint was a famous independent voice medium. And there's a whole chapter in The Miracle Workers about Leslie's work. You think of mediums today, and by the way, we speak about mediums. I've got to get this in because I'm going to forget Peter James's name as we go along. Peter James was on the old sighting show, and when they go on a ghost investigation, they'd always get Peter James. But some of these ghost investigators only use electronic instruments, and I think, there are very few mediums like Peter James who just, you bring him to a location, say, he started giving names, places, dates. I mean, he was absolutely top of the line. Anyway, Mr. Flint had the independent voice where the voice of the person who was dead would come through the air in mid-space with Flint wide awake and not in a trance. There's thousands of these on YouTube. You can type them in, type in his name. He was a man, Leslie, and that's what got me going into this whole thing, is that I wanted to find more people like Leslie Flint to compile this book. And by the way, I have to tell you that one of the big names in the ghost hunting world, and that tape's on there too, you can listen to it, was Harry Price at Borley Rectory, and he explains what he thinks most ghosts are. We want to get to that later. But making up this book was hard work, I have to tell you. I talked to some people who basically weren't psychic at all. So it wasn't, there were 2 or 3 tops, the lady in New Jersey, who we won't name, and she was at the top. But, yeah, it's very difficult. I'll have to tell you that to make a Yellow Pages book like this in today's world, where most people they call themselves psychic mediums, and they're really just cold readers. They're just telling you back what you've told them 5 minutes ago. And of course, I picked up on that right away. So I'm an old hand at this. I had my own show on WBT. We were streaming all over the world and, getting calls from New York to Cuba. And Stan Friedman was on. I'm sure you know Stan. Yeah. All that jazz. So, it was a labor of love. And I did it because I really feel that people need to be able to get out there and find people who can really do it. And there are a lot of people who are out there, and they can't really do it. And you'll find that out when you read the book. It's available in bookstores. It's available on Amazon. And, of course, obviously, at the end of the book, I say what not to do when trying to find a psychic or a medium. And, of course, what not to do is, call these hotlines and, that sort of thing. We won't mention any hotlines. Okay, so that's how it got going.
Well, one thing I liked you saying, about Peter James. I knew Peter when Peter was alive.
Great.
When Peter was alive, he was phenomenal, and we really we had clicked a couple different times because, especially, he had grown up in Rochester, New York, and then was out in working on the Queen Mary, and I grew up in upstate New York as well, and he was just such a down to earth individual when he was alive, and I'll be honest, he was one of the. I've known a lot of people who claim to be psychic, and a lot of them you really got to question their abilities, let alone sometimes
most of them you have to question. Come on, let's be honest. Most of them you have to question.
Yeah, let alone their ethics and a lot of other things. But Peter James, I mean, he was dead on with almost all the stuff he'd say. And I remember talking to him a couple different times, and he just randomly, this is before social media where a lot of so-called psychics will get their information from these days. And Peter would just randomly say something that would have happened, just a couple days prior and bring it up to me. And it was just so out of the blue. But he was just a phenomenal, phenomenal individual.
Well, you mentioned Queen Mary. There's no better time to bring up, and I lived in Long Beach, and where haven't you lived, Gary? Yeah, well, that's another. We could make a whole show out of that. And, all those appearances are real, but again, we go back to what Harry Price said. And what Peter Underwood, by the way, was a British man who actually started the Ghost Club. I don't know whether he started it. He had it for about 50 or 60 years. And he said, I think it's the atmospheric photograph theory. Well, what is the atmospheric photograph theory? He said most of these ghosts, most of these hauntings, it's just a replay. It's an etheric replay of what took place years ago. In other words, there's no actual conscious entity on that Queen Mary, looking at you at the haunted swimming pool. I'm sure people know what the haunted swimming pool is.
It's like a residual type haunting. It's a residual type, and I refer to it as residual. And what it is, it's like a tape player rewinding and playing itself over and over again. There's not really a spirit there. It's just the energy from some situation, a traumatic event, or something that's embedded within a structure that is within that area, and it just plays itself over and over again.
Exactly, just like Borley and the famous Borley Rectory case, which, of course, Harry Price investigated, the most haunted house in England. Of course, Price was accused of, trumping it up more than it really was, which he may very well have done. I don't know. But things really did go on at Borley. Poltergeists. It was more poltergeist. Are we allowed to talk about poltergeist? We can talk about poltergeist. I can give you a great story on poltergeist.
I want to bring that up. I've got it in my list of things to cover with you, but I don't want to get off.
It's on a list. Okay, it's on that laundry list.
I don't want to get off track from what we were talking about, how you decided to write the book, and I have some questions about the methodology. When you were looking for psychics, or you said in some cases, or in many cases, they were looking for you, what was the process you went through to get the names that you ended up either including or not including in the book?
Well, I did start out with Hans Holzer's book, which of course is, which is actually called The Yellow Pages, and I think it's still around in used bookstores and things like that. There's another great source for people who, of course, obviously I have a website up there, which people know that I do this. I write books. My first book, A Life Beyond Death, which came out in 1989, which fell on my head in a haunted house. That's a story. There is a site. I'm not going to name the site because I don't really think that's a good thing to do because I'm not really happy with the site. But it's a man who claims in the United States who claims that he was a normal detective, ordinary detective, and he became a psychic detective. And it's a directory of all these people, and they pay him a certain amount of money, I won't say how much, to be on his site. Well, I contacted hundreds of those people, and I would say that only a handful of the people were really worth writing about in a book. Some of the people were just, I don't know, just so off the wall. But again, this is the internet. This is social media. This is the way it goes today. So I did narrow it down. Oh, by the way, I must say that I had a reading from every one of these people. So if I had a reading from these people, then I would know whether or not they were on the money or not, or whether it was just a load of nonsense, which 90% of the 90% of the it was. The medium thing, which they now call psychic medium, which they're just really mediums. Either you're a psychic or you're a medium. All mediums are psychics, but not all psychics are mediums. I used to say when I had my show, I always say that it's just so watered down. It's just so watered down. The great mediums of the past, like Peter James and people like that, they're not around anymore. Why is that, Gary? Well, it's because you have to sit in a circle for donkey's years to get the gift to start with. You have to have the gift, and you have to develop the gift. Nobody's willing to do that. They want to go out there like a certain person we won't mention who wrote a lot of books, and I won't mention his name ever. Oh, dear. Who's basically making a lot of money, and he's not a medium at all. So there you go. That's how it all got going.
How many did you say you ended up including in the book? How many?
I ended up about 60, and I interviewed about 180, something like that, 180. It took me 2 years to do it. And, I must pay tribute to Jess, because Jess was a friend, too. We have to go to Malibu, California for that one. Jess Stern was a very famous paranormal writer who wrote The Miracle Workers. And he wrote it in 1962, but it was all about American psychics who lived in California, and most of whom he knew personally, who lived in Los Angeles. And I took the name The Miracle Workers. It was called The Miracle Workers, America's Psychic Consultants, and I made it the world's psychic consultants. And Jess was a really hard-boiled newspaper reporter. He wrote for Time magazine, and boy, it took a lot to convince him. And so all those people are no longer living, of course, but they were absolutely amazing people. So, and by the way, he is the one who wrote Edgar Cayce, The Sleeping Prophet. I met Jess in Virginia Beach, and then we connected when I lived in Malibu. So that's kind of how it got going. Maybe he was helping me from the spirit world. Jess is no longer living. Maybe he was helping me from the spirit world to write the book. I don't know. I've stayed in his house many times. That's where I met Susan Strasberg, who told me who killed Marilyn Monroe. And she was very good friends with Marilyn Monroe, by the way. Susan Strasberg was Lee Strasberg's daughter, who founded the Method Acting School in New York City. So there's just a little bit of how it got going.
Gary, we're going to take a break here in just a minute, but as you were interviewing people for the book and you were having readings done by them, were they aware of what you were doing, or was it more...
Oh, yes. I wrote them an email and said, I'm interviewing you for a book. There has to be a reading. Okay. There's no charge. I don't charge you to be in the book. It's not a hotel guide, dear. And then, they would, everybody knew before I ever connected with them that it was for a book. There was no funny hanky-panky going on.
Well, I almost think it may have been better in some cases that they didn't know, and maybe you'd get something a little bit more objective from them. But I don't know. Either way, there's, I guess, value to either method. And what was the criteria that you decided when you were either kind of thumbs up or thumbs down on them? Was it what they did for your reading, or was there something else that you used to kind of judge whether or not you were going to include them?
Well, no, it had to be my reading, because it doesn't matter what Hans Holzer said 20 years ago. This person was so fantastic that, and he or she told me X, Y, and Z and all the rest of it, but that doesn't mean anything if they can't nail anything about me. When we get to the point where you might have some callers, I'll tell you who this lady is, and there's a story, I'm not naming names, don't worry, there's a story about a woman I'm supposed to meet in the future who lives here in Spain. And this story has gone on longer than a laundry list of American presidents. It just goes on and on and on and on. And so, so if they didn't even mention that, or didn't give me any information that I could validate, I can now validate who this woman is. And it's, I'm actually meeting her through a waiter in a restaurant, but it's just you could know instantly. There's a gut instinct. Come on, you know. If you have a medium on your show and he says, I've got a does anybody out there have a name with a J? You go, okay, you roll your eyes and say, I got to go to a break.
Yeah, right. And that's true. That's true. But speaking of break, we do have to go to a break. So we're going to do that. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Gary Williams, writer, psychic investigator.
And we'll be opening up the phone lines in just a little while, so take down the number at 844-687-7669. You're listening to Jason and JV, Beyond Reality Radio. We'll be back after this.
tell you, when this album came out, what was it? It was like 93, 92, somewhere in there. What year did this come out?
I'm not sure.
Pearl Jam's album. It's a great album. I don't think they ever matched that first album, though. I mean, it's a great group, and Eddie Vedder is a great vocalist. But man, that first album was just amazing.
It was. I 100% agree.
All right, welcome back to the show, everybody. It's Beyond Reality Radio with Jason and JV. Tonight, our guest is Gary Williams. He's a writer and a psychic investigator. The book we're talking about tonight is The Miracle Workers, the World's Psychic Consultants, but we're going to be talking about some other books as well. His most recent, which is called A Walk on the Wild Side, One Man's Experiences with Psychic Phenomena, and Life Beyond Death, and some other works of Gary's. And Gary, we don't have much time here. This is a quick segment, but you were talking about testing these psychics before you put them in the book. You had them give you readings. Did you also have like standard questions or something that you did with every one of these psychics that you tested? Like maybe name a shape, kind of hold the cards, one of those kind of tests. Something
it wasn't J.B. Ryan at Duke University. It was just off the cuff, just like you do your show. I would say, tell me something about this going to happen in my future, or something that's going on in my life. And some people would start out by saying things which are absolutely ridiculous, and some people would say things that I could identify. So, no, there was no standard questions whatsoever. The worst thing you could ever do is start asking questions to a psychic and telling them, can you answer this question? Can you tell me when my girlfriend's going to come back? That's one of the most boring questions. And don't forget, I do this for a living as an psychic astrologer.
That might not be boring.
So, it's boring. There's absolutely no way that you could say, name my favorite color. What's my dog's name? My dog's name is Pinky, by the way. But it doesn't make any difference, because that doesn't prove anything. If, like the mystery woman in New Jersey who predicts things and they actually come true, I found her through Hans Holzer. Hans Holzer was extremely famous. You must know. Everyone listening, come on. If you don't know Hans Holzer, where have you been for the last 30 years?
Hans was phenomenal.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, Hans was phenomenal. But I ended up doing a thing for a couple of years back at a university many years ago where honestly, we used to test them we used to test self-proclaimed psychics and sensitives. And we had a series of things we had to follow, a chart that we had to follow, and whether it's cards with images or cards with certain designs, things of that nature, to try to test and see their percentages. And we got to go to break, but I mean the percentage rate was like 2-3% of the people out there actually tested above normal. So it was such a rarity. And we'll get into a lot more of that when we come back. The phone number is 844-687-7669. Again, 844-687-7669. We're going to be opening up the phone lines next hour, so if you have a question or a thought, give us a shout. You're listening to Jason and JV, Beyond Reality Radio. We'll be back after this.
They do it down on canvas and they do it at Waikiki. Blazing about the beach all day and night, the crickets creepy. Squinting faces at the sky. A Harold Robbins paperback. Surfers drop their boards and dry. And everybody wants a hat. But behind the shadow
paranormal that cannot be explained by scientific methods.
Told of a creature that was 6.5 to 7 feet tall.
The CIA ran secret mind control experiments.
It's a tale of a creature that's been seen by many, but believed by few.
And experts say there have been reported sightings of paranormal activity.
And there was this creature, and it ran down this hill.
They say something was flying over their house, and they have no idea what it was.
How the world's most powerful individuals are actually shape-shifting reptilians.
My scariest ghost hunting experience.
Jason and JV. Jason and JV. Jason and JV.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Beyond reality radio.
It's Thursday on the West Coast, Friday on the East Coast. Many are stuck somewhere in between. Welcome to Beyond Reality Radio with myself, Jason Hawes, and the always awesome JV Johnson.
So we've all seen those ads on TV, or we've heard them on the radio, you know, the 1-900 psychic hotline or whatever the heck they are. And we often talk about, you know, these aren't legitimate. Stay away from that. That's just a way to spend a lot of money foolishly.
What, Sister Chloe or whatever it was?
Yeah,
the one that used to do them all.
Mm-hmm. But tonight we're talking about psychics in general, also mediums, clairvoyants. There's a lot of different names, and they all kind of use the same energies. And there's good ones and there's bad ones, and there's a list now by our guest tonight, Gary Williams. He's a writer and a psychic investigator. It's called The Miracle Workers, the World's Psychic Consultants, and it's basically a yellow pages. It's a compendium of folks who perform these services. Gary interviewed and worked with a lot of them, selected some of them, and put them into this book. And we will bring him back in just a moment. But before we do that, I just want to remind everybody we've got a best of program coming up tomorrow night. And next week, Rob Guttrow will join us. He's an author, medium, and a paranormal investigator. He'll be with us Monday night to talk about his new book. It's his fifth book. It's called Ghosts of England on a Medium's Vacation. And basically, he wants to talk about, and he does in this book, what happens when a medium goes on vacation. Can you simply switch off that ability, or does it kind of, not to use a bad pun, haunt you all of the time?
Wah, wah. Anyways. All right. And then Tuesday, we got Judy Carroll, extraterrestrial ambassador. Yes, you heard that correctly. So we'll be discussing that next Tuesday. So make sure you stay tuned.
It's great stuff coming up next week. But back to our discussion tonight. Gary Williams, again, is our guest. Check out his website, GaryWilliamsParanormal.com. Gary, are all your books listed on the website?
Unfortunately, they're not. And this is because the webmaster got type 1 diabetes, and he isn't working on it anymore. I need to replace him with a new webmaster. So actually, the Miracle Workers book isn't even on there. The book that came out yesterday in London and in bookstores worldwide, Walk Don't Run, Run Don't Walk, is the Walk on the Wild Side book, is published by 6 books in London and Washington, D.C., and I don't know, everywhere else. So no, and I have to tell you that the very first one, which prompted the Poltergeist investigation, that's long out of print. It came out in hardcover in '89. So I have to find a webmaster to put them all on there and say, oh, my, I didn't know you wrote that book. People don't even know I wrote the Miracle Workers book because it's not on there. Pretty silly, but that's the way it is.
So talking about the Miracle Workers, when you went into this project, you sound like you're a pragmatist, if not necessarily a skeptic. Are you skeptic of most of the people who claim to perform these services?
Absolutely. When I found this website, which I will not name, by this man who sets this thing up with these people, and they pay him X number of dollars per month to be on it, I realized right then and there that it's impossible for most of these people to be psychic. I mean, there's people that are, unfortunately, all these wonderful people that I have written about, most of them are no longer living. The Dutch, I'm sure you've heard of the guy who fell off the ladder. He's been dead for donkey's years, Peter Herkos. He fell off the ladder, hit his head. He became world famous, charged phenomenal prices. There was another Dutch. These people are all Dutch. There's another Dutch guy called Dyke Shorn, and he wrote a book called My Passport Says Clairvoyant. And this guy was absolutely phenomenal. He had notary people write up affidavits that the stuff came true, and it came true to the letter. Years later, and there was Dorothy Allison up in Nutley, and she used to tell the police, look, don't worry, the boy's body, she never charged any money, by the way, the boy's body will be found on the 22nd of February at 1:22 p.m., somebody stumbled in the park, found the remains of the boy's body. I mean, these people are phenomenal. So, not a skeptic. You have to prove to me that, it's not Uncle Ted coming through. You have to prove to me, and there have been great mediums. I've sat with wonderful mediums. Most of them are in England. But the mental mediumship doesn't impress me too much anymore. But if you can tell me something is going to happen in the future, and it happens, you're psychic. How's that?
I think that's a pretty good criterion to use. Can you offer to us, I mean, there are a lot of people that listen to the program, and when we have psychics on the program that take listener calls and do readings on air, we get a lot of calls. It's a very, very popular topic. But a lot of folks who listen to the show, they'll go visit their local psychic or whatever. And I always say, hey, if you walk out of there feeling good about what you did, then every dollar you spent was worth it, as long as you feel good about it. But what kind of things can people look for that may tip them off as to whether or not they're spending their dollars wisely with that particular psychic?
Well, obviously, if you tell the psychic anything at all, and you start out by asking a question about what you want to know, then that person can take that information and turn it around 6 ways to Sunday and give you out. And don't forget, if it's a predictive type of reading, there's no way that it can be validated until you wait some period of time, sometimes years, to find out whether it's even going to happen or not. If it's a medium reading, that's different. If the person starts out saying things like, come on, you've seen these shows. You put 800 people in an auditorium, and the guy stands there, and he points, I have a John here. Can anybody take that? I want to talk to the lady in the back row here. Can you take that? I feel he was on meds before he died. Can you take that? I mean, come on, give me a break. And this is the nonsense that's going around with mental mediumship. I do not have a high regard. I love trance, and I love materialization and direct voice. They're not around that much anymore. There are some people in England that can still do it, and they pretty much keep it under wraps, because if somebody touches you when you're in a deep trance, it can shock you and cause you some severe problems. So, I would have to say that you have to be really careful if you go to a psychic and tell them anything. The answer to that question is, say nothing. Sag nix in German. Say nothing. Say nothing.
When you talk about psychics in that way, the Randy challenge comes to mind. You actually,
oh dear, Mr. Randy. Oh dear, and more than one ways. Okay, go ahead.
Well, you actually have met some that you believe in their abilities. Yet still,
absolutely,
no one has been able to claim that $1 million prize, which by today's standards probably isn't as much of an incentive.
Would you like to know why? I'll tell you the reason.
That's exactly what I'm asking.
The reason why nobody's able to contact, and the same thing with the mediums who contact people that passed over to the other side, is because he controls the criteria. It doesn't make any difference if 40 universities, including Southampton University in England, have done near-death studies and proved that consciousness is not in the human brain, that the physical body rots and dies and has nothing to do with the real you. He's going to say, that's nonsense. It's the dying brain. It's hallucinations. He will say that you researched it. There's no way he's going to give you the $1 million, even if you're the real deal. That's an answer to your question, and I think it's a darn good one.
Yeah, and it's definitely a catch-22, the way the whole thing's set up, that even if you were 100% genuine and able to hit everything, I mean, he's in control of the whole situation. How do you win? How do you win when everything's against you?
Well, you'll never win, because nobody even knows if he even has $1 million in the first place. It could be a lot of bullocks. And the other element at play is that he's completely in control of the test procedures. We had time. I could tell you about the guy out in Arizona, Gary Schwartz, who did some real tests with some real mediums where they were told nothing, and they scored very highly. And those people are now so famous that they don't want to do interviews anymore because they've written their own books. Well, why bother with Gary Williams? I'm world famous, all this sort of nonsense. This happens to a lot of people when they get to be famous.
We're talking with Gary Williams again, and the book is The Miracle Workers, the World's Psychic Consultants. I want to change the topic to the book that just came out, A Walk on the Wild Side, for just a moment. We'll get back to the Miracle Workers in a second. But you talk about that book, and you gave it a pretty interesting description, saying that the book was for those whose imagination has not been stifled by the standard education system. What do you mean by that?
The standard education system is that the paranormal doesn't exist, when in reality the paranormal is normal. And the element of, let's just take predictions, for instance, the idea that time exists. We could spend the whole show on that. I mean, the past, present, the future. If anyone can tell me that I'm going to move to Spain 9 years before it happens, when I have no interest in ever going to Europe, even for a vacation, and it all comes true, and they describe the house I'm going to live in and what the furniture is going to be like, then obviously there's a time element here. So the standard educational process tells us, and scientists are never going to admit this because they don't want to lose their jobs. We go back to, the Earth can't possibly be round. Everyone knows it's flat, So the standard educational process tells you that these things cannot simply be true. If you read the book, you'll realize that a lot of the things that you thought were true simply are not true. And I don't care how many James Randys you dance on the head of a pin, you cannot possibly get around that. I mean, these are it's all tied in. There's flying saucers in there. There's Stanton Friedman's in there. Everybody's in there. I don't think I left anybody out of a Walk on the Wild Side. But it's all about my life. It's my memoir, starting out with Carl Jung in '62 and 63. I think he died in the late '50s. I'm not sure. He's never come back after that. He just came that one time to say hello. That's really kind of spooky. Went home and told my parents, and they took me to a doctor.
And that's the problem.
They were very familiar with the standard educational process.
Yeah, that's the problem. We're going to go to break here in just a second. When we come back, I want to get into this poltergeist story because you were going to mention it earlier, but now this would be a good time.
You'll love it.
Yeah,
you'll love it. Happened in California. You'll love it.
All right, a lot more to come. You'll listen to Jason and JV on Beyond Reality Radio. We'll be back after this.
Welcome back to the show. It's Beyond Reality Radio. Jason and JV. We're glad to have everybody along. We're also very, very happy to have the program on so many radio stations around the country as the list of affiliates and the Beyond Reality Radio family continues to grow. We're looking forward to announce some new stations soon.
Yes, don't let the cat out of the bag. But no, but you can check out that list at beyondrealityradio.com, the list of all the stations we're on right there. And again, that list is constantly being updated with new stations being added, all the time. So make sure you check it often. And if we're not on a station in your area, well, you can tune in through the app. If you can grab for the smartphones right at beyondrealityradio.com for the iPhone or the Android. But if we're not on a station in your area, feel free to contact a local talk station in your area and request Beyond Reality Radio.
And our guest tonight is Gary Williams. And Gary, we teased the poltergeist story before the break. We've got about 3 minutes here, and that may give you enough time to start it. If we have to carry it over on the other side of the bottom of the hour break, we will. So start telling us the poltergeist story.
Okay, basically, in early 1989, I had a book out called Life Beyond Death. Actually, this book was a forward writer was Brian Hurst, a retired medium in Hollywood. I was living at the time in Santa Barbara. He called me and he said, I just heard Art Bell, Coast to Coast, and I just heard this couple say they have a poltergeist in their house. They were appealing to Art to put it out. They would really need some help. And things are flying around the house. There's strange symbols that appear on the walls. There's writing in soap on the bathroom mirror. And I'll give you the name of these people, which he did, and would you like to go and check it out? And I said, sure. Actually, I really didn't know. I mean, I did not hear the Art Bell show. By the way, Art Bell died about 3 weeks ago. I'd like to pay a little tribute to him.
Sure.
And he started Paranormal Radio. So anyway, to cut a long story short, I went to this house. It was very much like the famous novel, The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, which I used in the book. I used this in the book, Walk on the Wild Side. So I go there, and they say, well, look, this stuff just happens every day. Why don't you just move in and live here, and you'll be one of us and see it? And that's what happened. I lived in the house for 8 months. They had Ed and Lorraine Warren in, which was the biggest mistake in the world. The self-appointed demonologist. Ed's no longer living, of course. Lorraine's still around. Sadly enough, we didn't see eye to eye on any of the demon stuff. Long story, all the things that happened after the break, I'll be glad to tell you, it was just absolutely amazing. In front of your eyes, just stuff happening. I don't know. It was beyond reality. There you go.
Nice lead in there.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
We've got about.
You're stealing the name of our show.
We've got about a minute here. I need to ask you though, your comment about Ed and Lorraine Warren. And we've had several people on the program that have. They have. I don't know. I don't want to disparage them. I do think they did some good work, but there are people that have problems with the work. What was your problem with their work?
They aren't real. I mean, first of all, the Catholic Church cannot exorcise any sort of ghost or demon. If you listen to the Harry Price tape, Price says right out there, clergymen have no power over this. She wanted to get a Catholic priest to come in. She said Amityville, they investigated Amityville, it was the most haunted case. Alex Tannis worked with the American Society for Psychical Research, my best friend, the most famous psychic who ever lived, went to Amityville. He said, nothing happened, Dr. Osis, nothing happened. And so she comes in and she starts telling me about Amityville. I said, listen, first of all, you don't charge somebody $4,000 to come from Connecticut to do this, which is what she charged the family. And I have to be honest with you, there's not one single thing that they did that did any help at all to rid this thing. You know how it went away? By itself. On its own, in its own sweet poltergeist time. Of course, there is no such thing as time. Time is an illusion. To give you more updates after the news or whatever.
Yeah, and I will say that there's a lot of cases of them charging people money on many different fronts. So, but we won't get into that right now. All right, so we're going to take a quick break. The phone lines are now open, 844-687-7669. Again, toll free at 844-687-7669. You're listening to Jason JV, Beyond Reality Radio. We'll be back after this.
Welcome back to the show. Don't forget, tomorrow night is a best of program, as it is every Friday night. Monday, we've got Rob Guttrow joining us. He's an author, medium, and a paranormal investigator. We'll be talking about his new book called Ghosts of England on a Medium's Vacation. He'll be explaining what a medium does when they go on vacation, particularly someplace like England, Jay. I mean, you've been to England, you've been ghost hunting in England. You know the locations, the history, the spiritual energy that exists all around.
If you don't have a haunting in England, you're kind of the weird person.
You're the oddball. Yeah.
Exactly, which is total opposite of over here. But then Tuesday, we're going to be talking with Judy Carroll, extraterrestrial ambassador, extraterrestrial contact on Earth from the ET's perspective, and the disinformation campaign to cause fear. So that should be an interesting week.
Yeah, great shows coming up. Our guest tonight is Gary Williams. Stop by his website, GaryWilliamsParanormal.com. Check out his books, including The Miracle Workers, The World's Psychic Consultants, and A Walk on the Wild Side, One Man's Experiences with Psychic Phenomena. And Gary, we're going to jump to the phone lines. We've had some people waiting on hold, and then we'll get back to the poltergeist story. This is Debbie calling in from Pennsylvania with a question. Hey, Debbie, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hey, welcome to the show, Debbie.
I have a question. I just wanted to know if you could answer this. My mom and my brother, they drowned years ago, and we never knew, my sisters and I never knew how they drowned or the real story of how they drowned. Like somebody was following them.
I'm sorry, can you...
Now, are you asking me if I know how they drowned? I'm not a medium,
Right.
but I may be able to help you with the question. But I don't contact. I do know someone who does do that. But okay. So is that the question?
Yes.
So, do I personally know how they drowned? The answer to that question would be no. I do not know how they drowned.
Yeah, I think you're looking more for like somebody who can try to contact them on the other side.
Well, I could tell you the person, but you told me to keep my mouth shut about names. Am I allowed to give it now or not?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Gary.
You talk JV into it. Go
if
ahead.
I have your permission, we don't want anything bleeped out of the tape. They don't have tape anymore. Jane Doherty, Doherty, in New Jersey, and her website is a very strange name. It's called JaneDoherty.com. That's a joke, by the way. And she does this kind of thing, and she's legitimate. And how did you find her, Gary? Well, I found her through Hans Holzer. So she was one of the top-rated Hans Holzer people. So when I found her, I wrote about her, and we've since become friends. And I can't read myself, so she does read. But I will tell you something, Debbie in Pennsylvania. It's not a normal gift. It's a rare gift. You could contact 100 mediums on the internet, and you would just get oatmeal. So and I understand that you want to know the answer to that, but I think if you call her, you'll get the answer to that. That's all I can tell you, really.
And that's pretty straightforward. It's JaneDoherty.com. I'm actually looking at her website right now.
Doherty.
Yeah, so just look up Jane,
and I think
Jane
she's
Doherty.
listening. She's probably going to call in and say thank you. But the truth is, I wrote the book. I ought to know. Hans Holzer ought to know. And by the way, most of the people in Hans's book are dead. She's still going after all those years. What does that tell you?
So there you go, Debbie.
That tells you something.
Yeah, thank you for the call, Debbie. Let's go to Cheryl from Kansas. Hey, Cheryl, welcome to the show.
Thank you. How is everyone?
Good. Welcome to the show.
My question is a short one. When you have psychic ability, do you have it more in hot weather or cold weather? Does that have anything to do with it?
Before Gary answers that question, I'm curious why you're asking it, just out of curiosity, Cheryl. It's not a trick. It's not a trick question.
I don't know. I have psychic ability. I feel that I have it, but I always wondered if it's stronger, during cold weather or hot weather.
Interesting. Okay. Go ahead.
Well, the answer to the question is weather has absolutely nothing to do with it at all. And if you feel, and underline that word feel 20 times, that you have psychic ability, you should be sitting in a development circle of like-minded people to help you develop the gift. You did not just go to a psychic school and next weekend you're doing readings on the internet. So if you feel you have this gift, I encourage you to put an ad in your local paper, get a group of friends together on a Friday night, and sit in a development circle and learn how to develop psychic abilities. That's how I did it. I'm sure that's how Jane did it, and that's how anybody worth their salt does it. You don't just say, "Oh, I'm psychic. Oh, I have to do it now." It doesn't work that way.
Well, and I will say though, I have heard in the past, talking with other people who are self-proclaimed sensitives, just working in the cold. Sometimes it's like especially if they're cold, that they can't focus on what they're trying to do because they're freezing and their body's trying to stay warm and everything else. I have no idea if that's true or accurate or not. I'm just telling you what's been said.
Did that help you? Did that help you, Cheryl? Did I answer the question for you?
Yes, it has.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is Gene in Maryland. Hey, Gene, welcome to the show.
Hi, glad to talk to you.
Yeah, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I have never had an accurate reading in my entire life. And I'd like to know if
you're not the only one. I said you're not the only one.
I do believe there are a lot of charlatans out there.
Yeah, there definitely are. So what's your question on that then?
Well, my question would be can your guest tell me anything about myself?
Well, he's actually not a psychic or a sensitive. It's he's just written a book on them. Correct, Gary?
I have written a book. I do astrology readings, which are predictive in nature, which take about 1.5 to 2 hours, and I don't charge for my extra time. So if you have particular issues, what you do is you email me off the website, and you say, these are my issues, and I go through it, and I have to have your exact date of birth. So there is some psychic ability. I mean, I studied this for 12 years. I didn't just jump into it saying, well, I think I'll be an astrologer. I went to Edgar Cayce. Come on. It doesn't work that way, but I'll be more than glad to help you, or you can contact Jane. I don't really think that answering questions off the cuff in a 30-second reading does anybody any good, because it's just not possible. Look, I used to do this myself. I used to be on WBT. I used to take calls from people, and they used to say, oh, that was pretty good, and then they hang up.
Gene, before we let you go, how were you selecting your psychics for your readings? Was it just whoever was available, walk by a storefront and see a sign and walk in? Is that how you did it, or did you do a little research ahead of time?
No, there was a psychic church in Florida that a friend of my mother's was the minister in. And I had gone to several different people in that church, and nobody gave me an accurate reading.
All right. So you're talking more like a spiritualist church?
Yes.
Okay, I gotcha.
Well, contact Gary through the website as he suggested, and maybe he can point you in the right direction.
And that's GaryWilliamsParanormal.com.
My email address is on the website. You actually have to go to the website, and it's at the bottom of the page. But you can get accurate readings, but you have to put some work into it. It doesn't happen with a snap of the fingers.
Thanks for the call, Gene. Thank you very much. So let's pick up where you left off on the poltergeist story. You said the poltergeist left on its own. It wasn't exorcised. It wasn't anything the Warrens did.
No.
It just eventually left.
2.5 years. Well, I'll tell you some of the juicy incidents. I came to live there. As I said, Brian had heard on Art's show that this was real. I phoned them. They said, come and stay. The first night I was sitting in the living room. I had locked everything of value in the trunk of my car. I was driving an old Mercedes from the 1950s, very secure locks and everything, and including some of my book had just come out, so I had some copies of my book. I'm sitting there, and the book falls on my head out of thin air, hits me on the head, and falls on the floor. I said, this is impossible, because the book is in the trunk of my car. I went to the trunk of my car, the book wasn't there. Now, that was the first one. You want to hear some more?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're having dinner one night, and we're all talking about Ed and Lorraine coming, and it's going to be so exciting. We tried. They had Catholic priests and everything. I'm sitting there, and the hair is being cut off my head by invisible scissors, and you could actually see the hair being cut off and falling on the floor.
Wow. Now, when was this happening, Gary?
I'm not making this up, folks.
When was this happening, Gary? When was this?
89.
89.
Life Beyond Death came out in 89 in London, and I had basically was very interested in promoting that. But when I got a hold of this case, I never let it go, and I kept on with it. I would wake up every morning, and there would be something written in soap on the bathroom mirror. I said, well, they did it, until one day I had a bathroom in my own bedroom, and there's no way they could have get in with the door locked and said I was going to die that day. I would wake up with knives teleported under my pillow that weren't there when I went to bed, and there was nobody in the room. I mean, and I actually woke up one morning, there was a loaded revolver under my pillow.
Wow. Wow.
I'm not making this. It's all in there. And it's spooky because these people were terrified. They had, not sightings, what's the other one? They had Unsolved Mysteries in when Robert Stack was doing it. I knew Robert Stack very well, by the way. They had Unsolved Mysteries in, they had sightings in, they had everybody in. And then they had the Warrens. Oh, boy, we could do a show about that. She hated my guts. She told me I was going to hell. And I said, well, I guess we'll be seeing each other then.
Oh, man. We've got about 5 minutes left here, and I want to make sure we cover everything. I want to ask you about healers. You talk about healers in the book or not?
I do talk about healers. I must admit that I have never had an absent healing. I did get some healing when I lived in London from a spiritualist church, but it was just a sort of healing that makes you feel better. I was never really anything wrong with me. Now I have a benign prostate problem, and I've tried 5 healers, and none of them have ever done anything for me at all. I contacted one yesterday, and I told her about the prostate problem, and she said, how much does the surgery cost? I said, 6,000 euros. And she said, well, it would probably cost about the same much for me, because she said it's $350 for a 45-minute phone consultation. And I said, well, Alex Tanis, look him up, Tanous. He died in 1990. He was my best friend. Did healing all over the world, and he never charged any money for it, and neither do the spiritualists. So beware, listeners, beware of anyone who charges for healing. If they charge for healing, it isn't real.
That's great advice.
Yeah. So was there anybody else you wanted to recognize? We held off naming names until just a few minutes ago.
Well, Jane Doherty, as we've already talked about Jane, she actually predicted this woman coming into my life, which is now coming years later. On her church, of course, is no longer living. She told me in 2005 that this was going to happen. This brings out an important point. The time in these readings really is meaningless, because you can be seeing something that you think is going to happen next weekend, and it might happen years and years and years and years and years later. I don't want to name any other names because I have not had personal experiences which will validate their work, other than the little readings that I got in interviewing them for the book. Okay. There is a lady in Texas who's quite good, but you get the book and find out. I would say Jane is worth investigating, or not investigating, but having a reading with, simply because she's done this for so long. She's still going. She was in Hans's book. I've been doing it since the 1970s, and I have pinpointed future events right down to the day. I was doing a seminar here in January, and this guy came up, and I said, what happened on the 21st of November last year? Exactly on that day. He said, that was the day my girlfriend left me. Now, how do you do that unless you know what you're doing?
Well, now, did you interview any or investigate any of the celebrity psychics that are out there these days?
Yes, I had one, and I will name her, and she's probably not listening because she doesn't even have a radio. She's 86 years old now. Lynn Palmer she's an astrologer. Astrologer Lynn Palmer, astrologer to the stars, was friends with Frank Sinatra and Mia Farrow, and she told Mia Farrow, whatever you do, don't marry Frank. He's a drunk, and X, Y, and Z. She was very friends with Frank, by the way. Anyway, she's living in Las Vegas, and she's actually quite an interesting person to talk to. I don't know how accurate the astrology is. She told me how she studied it when she was in her teens or something, and she's now like in her 80s. But, she's done readings for a lot of extremely famous people. I think sometimes in this book, the interviews with the people's personalities was far more interesting and worthwhile than the actual psychic part. So there was a combination of both. She was the only really famous person that I interviewed that's still alive. Obviously, Leslie Flint, who I told you brought through Harry Price, and I think I sent Eddie the tape. It's not a tape, but you have to realize I started out in the 60s, so I still say tape. sent him the connection to that. And your listeners can go and listen to it if they want to hear Harry Price talk about what ghosts are.
Okay.
Yeah. The link we'll give the link out. We didn't have time to play it tonight. We've got about we've got about a minute and a half here. Now I know you mentioned that there's some of the books are on your website, but links for purchasing them, are they on any other site or any other marketplace?
No, it's actually, if you want, you just have to just announce the name of the book because it's not on. You can get it on Amazon. It's in paperback. The Miracle Workers are World Psychic Consultants. And then the other one is published by John Hunt. You just type in the name of the book. It is on the website. I don't think there's a link on it. The other books are out of print. If you want to know about life after death, there's a lot about that in A Walk on the Wild Side. A Life Beyond Death is out of print. You can get it on any out-of-book print website, I would imagine. And I have just got another one I just turned in to the publishers about a month ago called The Foreseeable Future, The Mystery of Precognition. And that is really all about dreams and things that came true years later, the Aberfan disaster and all of that. And that book is in, but that won't be out for quite a while because my stuff is all traditionally published. I don't believe in self-publishing. I think it's ridiculous. Oh, sorry, did I say that? Uh-oh. Now I'm going to get hate mail. Uh-oh. This is worse than snoring. Did I say snoring?
I want to follow up, and we don't have much time at all, but I do want to ask one more question. There have been several television shows recently and within 10 years or so, but some very recently that feature psychics or mediums. I'm sure you're aware of the shows. You may or may not have seen any of them, but I'm just curious. We don't need to disparage anybody, but have any of those stood out to you as being impressive?
The only show that ever stood out to me that was impressive was one that Bob did before he died. That was the Unsolved Mystery Show. And now they have somebody else, I understand, that did it. It's Cosgrove Mirror, and then Sightings, of course, with Bill White. Nothing now. I don't live in that country anymore. I don't get American television. I don't know. The answer to that question is, other than the two shows I just mentioned, which were entirely credible, thoroughly researched, had recreations, I don't really know. And Bob, by the way, didn't believe in any of this. Robert Stack didn't believe in any. He thought it was ridiculous.
Gary, thank you so much for being on the program. It's been a fascinating discussion. We appreciate your time, especially because you had to get up so early.
It was a pleasure, Gary, and I look forward to talking to you again at some point.
We will get together when something new comes out. Okay, keep going. Take care.
Good.
Bye-bye.
Have a great night.
Perfect.
All right, so we're going to take a break and come back and wrap things up. You're listening to Jason and JV, Beyond Reality Radio. We'll be back after this.
We're setting sail to the place on the map from which no one has ever returned. Drawn by the promise of the joker and the fool, by the light of the crosses that burn. Drawn by the promise of
Another night goes by quickly. Don't forget, tomorrow night is a best of program here on Beyond Reality Radio. It's going to be a good one, so you'll want to tune in for that.
And all right, so make sure you head over to facebook.com/Beyond Reality Radio, like the Facebook page. Then head to beyondrealityradio.com, grab the free apps, find all the stations we are on, and so much more. Also, if you download the show from iTunes or anywhere else, just rate it for us because it helps push it forward and makes it easier for people to find. And that's what it's all about. But that's going to do it for us. It's Jason and JV, Beyond Reality Radio. We'll catch you all soon.
All right, YouTube chatters, what are you guys picking on me because I have this nervous habit, or I wouldn't call it nervous habit because I'm not nervous, but I have this habit of itching myself like all the time, like all the time, right? Is that what you're making fun of over there? Seems to be that's what you're doing. You're talking about all these creams and salves and ointments that I should be putting on, unless you're talking about Doug, because I'll tell you what, some of those jokes would deserve a cream or an ointment. Anyway, thanks for hanging out. I don't know. Tomorrow night's a best of program, obviously, so we probably won't be around in chat or anything, but that doesn't mean you can't. I'm not sure which program they're running, but it should be a good one, as after all, it is a best of. And next week, we'll be back live. Monday night, we've got Rob Guttrow joining us. Should be good. But thank you all for being here. Great chat group tonight. A lot of fun. And I look forward to catching you all next week. And make sure you have a great... What's with the nipple scratch comments? Are you kidding me right now? We all have... I don't know what it is. I don't know. My skin actually does itch. It's just dry skin. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. I think it's the hard water here. And it's making me itch just thinking about it. See? Anyway, okay, so have a great weekend, everybody, and thank you for being here, and we'll catch you next week. I missed some of you that weren't here tonight, so if you guys happen to be watching the replay or just not chatting, I miss you. Seriously, you guys are all great. So have a great night, everybody.